Good evening. You're very welcome to Centre Ground, live stream to you every Wednesday evening from 8 to 9 p.m. And tonight, the spotlight is on the entertainment industry. I have a number of guests lined up. I'm sure you'll find them very, very interesting. Walter Ryan-Purcell is going to speak to me about a film that he is producing that will be located in Killarney. Keenan from Offaly is going to speak to me about Offaly Good Vibes. Then I will be chatting to former Irish international cricketer Whelan about his music and his filmmaking, and above all his work as a promoter of peace and justice. And then in the second half of the programme, our panel discussion will be chaired, as always, by Marion McGowan. And Marion tells us that the topic for discussion this week is the opening or reopening of the pubs. So don't worry if you don't get to see all of tonight's programme. The video will be available immediately afterwards on the Irish Inquiry YouTube channel and also on the Irish Inquiry Facebook page, and indeed the links to it will be on my own Facebook page, and each of the individual interviews then will be available in the days ahead. So my first guest is a true Renaissance man. First and foremost, he is a farmer, and then long before we heard about climate change, he set up a recycling and renewable energy company. He is a tour operator. He appeared in Dragon's Den a few years ago seeking €50,000 for his business and went home with €100,000. But tonight he's going to chat to me about something that he dreamed up during lockdown. Walter, you're very welcome to Centre Ground.
Thank you very much, Anna.
You're going to chat to me tonight about a dream that you had during lockdown. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, I suppose this all came out because of COVID, which is amazing, really. I was fully booked with American tourists from April to October, and thankfully 3/4 of them have rescheduled for next year and the following year, but 100% cancellation for this year. So I wrote a book on Kinsale a few years ago, and I'm presently writing one on Killarney. So here I was sitting in this very armchair on the 8th of June, to be exact, reading all about the Herberts who lived in the Muckross estate for 200 years. And that's Henry Arthur Herbert Sr. He actually died in 1866 in Adair Manor, would you believe? He was on his way from Dublin down to Killarney. So he had Queen Victoria to stay in 1861. So it's a fascinating family. Lovely estate. There are two real estates in Killarney. There's the Kinmare estate, which is around the town, the bigger estate, which was owned by the Browns, and then they had the Muckross estate, which was owned by the Herberts. And I was just about to write all about the Herberts and the Muckross estate and the visit of Queen Victoria in 1861. And I just lifted my head out of all these books and I said, this has to be a TV series. It's absolutely made for it. The house is in pristine condition. It's actually a national museum and beautifully kept by the OPW look after the grounds and everything, and they do tours through the house all the time. But the trustees of Muckross House do a lot of work there, and they look after the cafe and the Muckross traditional farm. fantastic. So so it's all there. And you know, the other lovely thing is a lot of the people working on the estate, their fathers and grandfathers and mothers and grandmothers and ancestors have been working on the estate for hundreds of years, and now their descendants are now working on the estate. So it's all there. So we're filming in Muckross House, the traditional farms at the beautiful Muckross Abbey. We're also filming at Kerry Bog Village, which is near Glenbeigh. It's between Killarney and Glenbeigh on the Ring of Kerry. And
okay, if I can hold you there, Walter.
Okay.
You have skipped on to the film. So you have this idea that you would like to do a TV series, something along the lines of Downton Abbey, and so you have this dream. How did you manage to get this off the ground?
I contacted a friend of mine called Mary Wood. She was an actor in a film called Tradition in Killarney about 3 years ago. And I asked her to put me in touch with the director of Tradition, a guy called Damien O'Callaghan. So he and his team, which is Declan O'Shea, that's Damien there, super guy, and his friend and colleague Declan O'Shea and Tim O'Connor. So lo and behold, all the expertise is right here in Killarney. So I got a call from Damien out of the blue the following Monday, and we spent ages on the phone that day and the following day, and we had met on the Friday, and all of this has completely and utterly come together since June, which is fantastic. And we're filming from the 5th of October to the 24th of October, and we've got.
And it stars.
Patrick Bergin, no less.
Ooh,
fantastic. Yeah, there he is.
Yeah.
He acted with Julia Roberts in Sleeping with the Enemy.
Yes.
And we've got Paul Ronan. Do you know Saoirse Ronan's dad? So Paul was in Veronica Gear in the film and Fair City as well. So we've got a whole lot of younger actors as well. Fantastic up-and-coming Irish actors. And really, this is going to be on the world stage. So I hope it's going to help a lot of these fantastic young Irish actors make a name for themselves.
And the music score for the film, I believe.
Is Sasha Putnam. He's actually a friend of mine as well. His dad is David Putnam, who produced War of the Buttons and Chariots of Fire. So
you had lots of really good. You've had lots of really good contacts then, and that helped you to get it off the ground.
Absolutely, yes, Anna. Yeah.
And I was chatting to you earlier this week, and your dream now is that this film will actually put Killarney on the map. Well, it is already on the map, but that this will, I suppose, reinvigorate the tourist industry in Kerry.
And all of Ireland, Anna. I really think this is going to show off not only Kerry and Munster, but the Wild Atlantic Way, the Ancient East. It'll bring a whole new generation of tourists from all over the world, not just American, but Chinese and all over Europe and Australia, New Zealand, everywhere. We'll learn to love Ireland and love the scenery and love the people, because this is going to be real Ireland. You mentioned Downton Abbey there. This is the Downton Abbey of the future for Ireland, but it's going to be real and raw, and we've got evictions and wakes, and we've got lots of lovely real Irish stuff in it, not just the grandeur of the big house. If you know what I mean.
Well, Walter, that is a really wonderful story. We hear so many bad things about the lockdown, but it's really, inspiring to know that good things have come out of lockdown. And indeed, I wouldn't be speaking to you tonight were it not for Stephen Kerr's dream of creating this platform. It's a platform that he created during lockdown. So it has enabled people from all around the country to come together tonight on this platform for this live stream, which is absolutely fantastic. Walter will be chatting to you later on in the programme.
All right, thank you, Anna.
So my next guest is also another man with great dreams. He has a degree in music production and media studies. He's the founder of Offaly Good Vibes, and he has promoted several events in Offaly. One of them he got me to attend last year. It was, he was commemorating Woodstock, and the power of this man's persuasion, he actually got me to dress up Woodstock style, you know, hippie flowers in the hair, long flowery skirt and so on. And thankfully, that's all I had to do. There are some elements of Woodstock that I don't think I'd be able to embrace. But Johnny Keenan, you are a man with unbelievable persuasive powers. You're very welcome to Centre Ground.
Thank you very much for having me, Anna. I don't know, after listening to Walter, I wouldn't say my powers of persuasion are anything like him, but that's the Kerry man. So fair play. Yes. And very good story there. So not a big part on it, yes.
Sorry, Johnny, I was going to get you to begin with Offaly Good Vibes. You set it up in 2008, and I'd like you to tell our viewers a little bit about it.
Absolutely. Well, I'm a native of Offaly, and as I said, I did music production, management, and media studies in Ballyfermot, and then I ventured out to the four corners of the world to see what it had to offer. So after spending time in America and working in bars and festivals and such in Australia and seeing a bit of Asia, I decided to come back, and I was very impressed with where Offaly was in 2008 from when I had left it in about 1998. And it was a very multicultural place, particularly Tullamore and Burr. You know, we had an awful lot of Eastern Europeans and Africans living and working in these places. And I was very inspired. And then I seen that there was a melting pot of talent from local artists. And I decided there and then to set up Offaly Good Vibes and to promote everything that was original and good about the county and everyone that lived in it. And to shine highlight all that is good, absolutely, within all the art forms, but particularly music and spoken word and comedies, which I would be familiar with, as doing gigs in those three genres or areas, if you like. But we did the first event we did, and it was an amazingly well received. It was to celebrate the 30th anniversary of the original One Love concert that Bob Marley did in Kingston, Jamaica, in 1978. You might have remembered in 2000 or 1998, John Hume and David Trimble and Bono emulated in some small way. There you go. And we had Natty Whaler, who was part of the Whalers crew back in the day, and he headlined it, and we got loads of local acts. Dirty Blackguards, principally, probably one of the best bands never to get out of Tullamore. And amazing day. Oxfam raised money, and awareness was raised for Oxfam, but it gave us the impetus in relation to putting on other events. Then shortly after that, we had Alabama Tree. Then we had the Beat. So we were bringing international acts to Offaly and supporting local acts within Offaly and bringing national acts. But it's a tough task, and over the years we did it sporadically because there wasn't enough money and input to keep it going. As a regular event. We might have done one or two festival events as well. In the Phoenix Festival, for example, was in Tullamore in 2010. So we would have worked hand in hand with the committee from there. But it's kind of going along at its own pace since 2008 for 12 years. But the research that I'm doing on a regular basis, I'm always meeting more poets, more musicians, more comedians, more visual artists, and more directors and videographers and YouTubers. So the amount of talent across the board in Offaly is amazing. But I've kind of come to the conclusion now, with the times we're living in, with COVID and the uncertainty of where all industries are, I found it, I took it kind of personally that the artists particularly were really left high and dry, like, you know, go back in the whole stereotype, the whole cliche, go back now and get a real job. Nowhere else in the world where I've been would our artists treated with such disdain and such disrespect. And I'm sorry to say, but particularly down the country, whatever about Dublin and the main cities, nothing really gets past the major cities in relation to art. There's bursaries here and there, but my big idea basically is that Vegas didn't exist until someone built it. Motown, same thing in Detroit. Nashville, you have to create a scene. So that's basically what I've been doing for 12 years. Awfully good vibes, more than a state of mind, if you like, So it's right in the heart of Ireland. And from a tourist perspective, we have the canal, the Grand Canal going through. The major part of it goes from Dangan, close to Edenderry, all to the mouth of the Shannon, in Shannon Harbour. That's an amazing area. It needs to be developed. We're talking about Dublin and Galway being connected now by another greenway, and the Shannon, obviously, a good percentage of it, as you know, goes through Offaly. And it's not particularly about Offaly. It's more kind of like the Midlands. But Offaly is a nice word, even though it kind of has a derogatory term.
Not at all.
In relation to that, it was awfully bad. You always hear awfully, AWF, ULL. So I just kind of flipped it on its head. Everything is awfully good. So the vibes are good in Offaly, but I'm really saying it in all of Ireland, but we need a centre point. And I think Offaly is that centre point. And looking ahead, which I'm always doing, I see that Ireland are the UN Security Council next year. So I think art and peace go hand in hand. And I'm interested to hear what Raj has to say, because what I've been promoting down through the years, since our first Bob Marley tribute, thank you very much, you read my mind there, Stephen, is the John Lennon event that we did in 2018. And I'm always looking for a charity element, whether it be local or international. And in 2018, we had a fundraiser for Simon Midlands community. And this year is the 40th anniversary of John Lennon.
Hard to believe, isn't it?
It's unbelievable to believe. And I actually remember I was 5 when he died. And I just remember being very upset because everyone that was in the room at the time was very upset. And the same thing with Marley when he died on the 11th of May in 81. But I think by honouring these guys, and not just them, there's a fantastic woman there from South Africa, Marion McGowan, who not many people are aware of, but is of same stature as Lennon and Marley in her own right from South Africa. And these were all very peaceful protesters that used the power of song to really push home something. And I'm looking at it from being a promoter for years. I think there's a certain element of banality that we've accepted. And it's amazing. It's very refreshing that most of the bands that I know within Offaly and around the country that I work with, not at the moment, obviously, because everything seems to be on hold, but they're going back to the drawing board. They're going to create, and they're coming back with something more powerful than what they had. Because these are the people we need to be relating to, getting our information from, and I endeavour to promote them as much as I can. So John Lennon is the next big thing coming up. Obviously, I'm restricted in relation to what I can do and bringing people together. But I think give peace a chance, and its 40th anniversary is very significant in relation to how I want to move forward and embrace the UN situation that Ireland is in, and promote peace through art. That's basically what I want to do.
That is a wonderful note on which to end, because it's a topic that I will be picking up on with my next guest, Raj. So thank you very much, Johnny. I can vouch for the fact that you are unbelievably persuasive in getting people to come on board with what you're doing. You're really, really absolutely brilliant at organising events, and everything is just organised to a T. And I have to say that I really did enjoy that Woodstock event that you organised last year in Tullamore. So it will be fantastic. It will be fantastic to have this John Lennon event now in December, and I'm looking forward to it. So you're promoting Offaly, and just at this stage, I'd like to give a shout out to Ray Dolan in Mullingar. Earlier today, Ray interviewed me. He does the shout out each day at 12 o'clock. He has viewers from all over the world. They were messaging him in from the States, from Australia, from the UK. So that's at 12 o'clock each day, his shout-outs show. And then at 5 o'clock, he does the bus sessions. And I think this evening was his 172 bus sessions he has done. Each day, 7 days a week. Oh my God, the level of commitment. So Ray is a musician. He's a nephew of Joe Dolan, and he's part of the Dolan family. Really worth tuning in his way each day at 12 o'clock and at 5 o'clock every evening. Again, if you don't manage those times, all of the videos are available. It's Ray Dolan from Mullingar in Mullingar. You'll find him on Facebook and YouTube, and I think he's on Instagram as well. So that brings me now to my next guest. I had the great pleasure of working alongside Raj when we were making Taste the Pure Drop for Athlone Community Radio. Raj is, as I mentioned earlier, a former Irish international cricketer, and nowadays he works as a musician and a filmmaker, and most importantly, he uses his unbelievable talents to promote peace and justice. So Raj, I'm delighted to be able to chat to you this evening.
Anna, thanks a million for having me.
So Raj, I suppose maybe we might let our listeners sample some of your work. Your latest release is a video about, is a song that you wrote about homelessness. So maybe we could just sit back and enjoy the first couple of minutes of that video if Stephen is able to get that up now. Yes, here it is. Now the sound, can we hear the sound on that?
Baby's got the blues again. Wait a lifetime for your shit to come in. Could you save my heart tonight? I don't know, it's been broken now so many times. And everyone I've ever heard, will their pain come home me like it probably should? No, you never meant no harm. A good heart cries in the wise, singing sad songs. Sometimes you go nowhere, at least that's what it feels like anyway. What is a home? What is a home?
Yes, that is Raj there with his latest release, What is a Home? Tell me a little bit about that and what inspired it, Raj.
Well, it's basically based on this visually impaired homeless woman who my friend made a documentary about her, actually called Rosemary. And I love the documentary, and Dave is a good friend of mine, so I wanted to help her out in any way I could. I just think it's tragic that someone, you know, in that condition has to be homeless. And I got to know her a bit, and I just wanted to help her in any way I could. So she said the best way is just to get the word out, you know, and raise awareness about her situation, and that's what we did. So, you know,
And that is what you do through your music. So maybe you might tell us a little bit about your albums and the themes that you cover.
Yeah, well, I brought an album out in June there, and I guess I covered a few issues like the Chelsea Manning. I covered, obviously, Rosemary and the homeless situation. Just war in general, you know. Yeah, just promoting peace and opposing war, basically, is what I mainly do, you know.
Yes, and all your music is original. You write all this yourself.
I do, yeah.
Yeah. And so you are working now with AFRI, which is an NGO, Aid from Ireland, and that is an NGO that promotes peace and justice. Tell me a little bit about your work there.
Yeah, so basically I'm their sort of resident filmmaker, and the main issues we cover are like the famine, the Irish famine on Gortamore, direct provision, and the environment and climate change, and the militarization aspect, with Shannon being used as a military base, basically. So they'd be our core issues.
Okay, I think Stephen might have a video clip there from a recent video that you did on the famine and direct provision. And it features...
Nowadays, Ireland is sometimes the state of refuge for people who
Donald
are
O'Kelly.
forced.
Oh, sorry, Donald O'Kelly. I do apologise.
No worries.
Nowadays, Ireland is sometimes the state of refuge for people who are forced to emigrate from their own country and seek security here in Ireland. There are currently 7,700 people applying for international protection in Ireland. Many of them are resident in up to 40 direct provision and emergency accommodation centres dotted around the country, sometimes in appalling conditions, and they endure what's effectively an obstacle course in trying to prove that they qualify for refugee status here in Ireland.
So very, very powerful way of reaching people through music and through film on issues, you know, that are very close to your heart: homelessness, direct provision, and so on. Yeah. But as a musician, now since COVID came and we have all of these restrictions, how difficult is it for you to make a living?
Yeah, it was difficult enough before, you know. Like it's since streaming has come along, there's basically no income in that, so musicians relied on live gigs and merchandise, you know, and obviously that being cut off, like Johnny was saying, we're basically left high and dry, you know. I know this evening they've released information about a industry stimulus package, which will be 1 million for artists and 5 million going to the venues and promoters. So that's like a stimulus package. They're trying to get things going, I guess. So I guess that's the first good news we've had in 6 months, you know. So but yeah, like I say, it can't go on forever. We really need to sort of there has to be some sort of roadmap for musicians, because as I said, it was hard enough as it is already. So yeah,
it's difficult. Well, Raj, this is a topic that we'll be picking up on now in a couple of minutes when we talk about the pubs and the pubs reopening, because the pubs are reopening, but there's no live music allowed. Yeah. So we'll get you to join in that discussion in a couple of minutes. I'm going to bring in Marion McGowan now. Marion is a lecturer, a journalist, and a civil rights activist for many, many years. And each week, Marion will join me on Centre Ground to anchor our panel discussion, and she will choose the hot topic of the week. So, Marion, thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Very happy to join you, Anna, and I've just been so inspired by the guests you have in this evening's programme. And yes, indeed, I am going to be talking about pubs, because, like it or not, pubs are very much a central part of who we are as Irish people, of our social, arts, and hanging out, whether we like it or not. The scene, it's intrinsic to who we are. Look, in terms of what's been going on, just to remind you that pubs have now been divided into pubs that serve food and pubs that don't serve food. And the pubs that don't serve food are called wet pubs. So they are not open. And they have been closed 6 months. And that's about 189 rather days. And that actually means that the best part of 3,500 pubs run primarily by families. You know how the Irish village or the small town pub is passed down from family to family, from family to family. So that's 3,500 pubs and 25,000 employees and their family have been closed down for the last 6 months. And indeed, at the end of September, these pubs, the pubs that don't serve food, will have reached the end to the 6-month moratorium on having to pay their mortgage. In fact, banks said that at the end of September, we cannot, nor will we, support non-payment of your mortgage. So at the end of September, if you don't pay your mortgage, you will be closed down and bankrupt. Just as well, our government have announced that on the 21st of September, these family pubs that don't serve food may open. However, let me give you some words: invasive, unnecessary, undemocratic, restrictive, almost totalitarian. These are the words of a barrister who is a leading voice on securing licenses for pubs in Ireland. She has described the regulations apportioned to pubs as being thus. And in fact, she goes as far as to say, her name is Constance Cassidy, and she's an SC. She goes as far as to say that she doubts that there was any objective basis for the introduction of regulations. These regulations that came in last week. She was speaking in the Irish Times, at the time, and was interviewed by them. And she actually said that, look, this is huge bureaucracy that has got nothing to do with running a pub. In fact, she went as far as to say that it's an intermeddling in business. It's messing up the possibility of families being able to get on with the business of what they do best, running a pub. And she points out that there's a huge injustice in terms of having to face COVID-19 and live with no income because you don't serve food. Now, this raises a number of questions. We've read and seen a number of articles that see that publicans are hugely aggrieved, no more so than before and just after the introduction of special new regulations that see police, Garda, been able to go into pubs and shut them down. And implement
can I interrupt you there, Marion? Can I interrupt you there? I think we have a video clip that actually picks up on that point. Jimmy Jess, many of you will be familiar with Jimmy Jest. He's on Facebook and you'll find him on Twitter. And he does a parody on the goings on of the politicians and so on. And he did a video on these new regulations relating to food. Republicans happen to keep a record of all of the food that people eat. So I'm just wondering, is Stephen able to bring up?
Yes, because many a true word in its basic form.
Off home with us now, lads. Go on. Oh no, it's 11:30. That's closing time, and that's it. No more. You've had enough. My license isn't worth it. I know I don't have a license, but sure, look at the door what the loads what I haven't got. Good luck to you, lads. Safe home. Mind the house snack box now. Good luck. Good luck. Good luck. Good luck. Good luck. Good luck. That's that done now for tonight. That was a busy night, huh? Oh, I better look at my old receipts and ring the old sergeant to tell him how we go on. He'll be waiting to see. Now till we see. 999 and there. Oh, Sergeant, how are you? Sorry, Jimmy here. Hey, I'm just with a busy night. I'm just ringing in with the receipts there, what people had and everything else. Have you a pen there? Your pulse? Oh, you're putting it on the pulse. Yeah, good man, come on. Right, we started off, just opened at 5 o'clock there, and the first lad I had in, a lad from Westmead, he was in from Mullingar. Jesus, he talked the greatest load of shite, or all like that, them boys from Westmead. Talked horrid shite, but just I tell you, if he spent as much as he talked, I wouldn't have to open tomorrow. Anyway, no, that lad, he was in the wrong place. He was looking for the chemist. Thank God, he was gone in a hurry. No, the first 3 customers I had, there were a crowd of Liverpool boys. Aye, so them boys are still celebrating, the Premier League. They never really got to celebrate properly. Yeah, they were all right now. Look, it didn't last 105 minutes. I think they had 2 or 3 pints and they were, I don't know what to be able for. I'll email you their names anyway. You probably know most of them, anyway, the usual crowd around the town, And do you know what they had? They had the salad. Yeah, and they kept calling it Mo salad. I kept giving them more salad too. And they paid for it too, the feckers.
Well, I think that in the week that An Post announced that they're going to be publishing stamps around Father Ted, we have always and have a tradition in this country of sending up the absurd. And quite frankly, I don't think there is any other word to describe regulations, and it's not my word. I have got a number of politicians and commentators on this. It's absurd. These regulations are absurd. And this evening, literally just before we came on air, there was an announcement that TV volume are to be kept low, and there's to be a ban on live music or dancing as part of the regulations for the reopening of pubs, be they pubs that serve food or not. Now, Anna, this is so absurd. I actually wondered when I saw that post on your page whether I was looking at the Waterford Whisperer. What on earth has a TV at low volume and no live singing or dancing got to do with tackling the spread of a real virus, so COVID-19? And of course, we need to keep in mind that these regulations in March were basically introduced so that our ICUs and our hospitals were not overwhelmed with the amount of people needing to go there. Now, they call that flattening the curve. However, what we are now dealing with, we've actually done that. We've flattened the curve. So this evening, before the 21st of September, there are new regulations that state that TV volumes, no live music and no dancing. Seriously, Anna, I actually think that I am in a Father Ted setup here. And I'm wondering if Sister Mary Patrick, name changed from my secondary school back in the 80s, is actually now in charge of NEFID.
Right.
So
it's a very, very interesting question. And I suppose, Walter, you operate as a tour operator and your main market is America. And I'm sure that the Irish pub is very much part of the experience of the American tourist coming to Ireland. Would I be right in saying that?
They absolutely love it. And it'd be crazy. You couldn't have Americans holidaying here without, being able to bring them to the pub. Equally, they love to listen to the music. And you don't have to be jumping around and jumping off the rafters. It could be lovely, lovely Irish music and lovely musicians and singing and everything. And that's actually the pub they love to go into. Not any madness, just lovely, beautiful music. Down here you've got the lovely Sliabh Luachra music. And that just is what they absolutely adore. And have a couple of pints of Murphy's or Beamish or Guinness or whatever, and that's their ideal evening.
And I can tell you that basically begs the question, because we go to an Irish pub, we sit down, we have a sing-song. Huh? It really does beg the question, are we taking the heart out of what it is to be in an Irish pub? We're not allowed to sing. We're not allowed to dance. All jokes aside, where does this stop? Yeah, where does this stop? The very
Johnny,
fact of that happening. Johnny, I'd love to hear what you've got to say about that.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's absolutely crazy. Like there's one word that kind of sums up the Irish psyche, I suppose, and the Irish culture, and everyone buys into it. I see it even being used on EastEnders. The crack. Everyone is looking for the crack. Yeah. And when you talk about Ireland, what's the crack, and then you explain to them, to our American friends, what the crack. It really is essentially fun with an Irish slant on it. And where crack really lives is in Irish public houses and Irish festivals, Irish venues, where there's a gathering of people. You're going to have the crack. Even in here on this humble platform, we're going to try not to crack out of it, like, in relation to the far side of it. And I think there's something sinister in relation to how the publicans have been treated as well, because we're talking about the entertainment sector, the tourism sector, and entertainment, tourism, and hospitality. Now, I've been a barman in many a city, and I've seen it for what it is. It's a place for people to go, and it's a big thing, especially in rural Ireland, And it's not a matter of drinking 10 pints and getting a taxi home. No. It's a matter of maybe having a 7-Up and looking at a band, or listening to someone, or having a conversation. Yeah. And it's as I said in the green room, it's kind of sanctimony in relation to us as the people, and in relation to tourism, because as Walter alluded to, and I know myself from doing tours, that the Irish pub is the centre of not just a community for Irish people, but in relation to a go-to place for our tourists. And it's Johnny, kind of like
I hear you.
But there's another thing as well. There's the way that we don't really know what's going on, but at the same time, there's a lot of stuff going on behind closed doors. And typical in Irish fashion, we only hear about it when it's too late. So there should be consultations in relation to what exactly is happening. And I'm talking about in relation to, I didn't get to develop the point quickly, Anna, about Boardnamona and ESB. Those jobs are gone because fossil fuels can't be burned. But the infrastructure is still there. And that's where artists need to live, because that's an empty canvas for artists. 14% of the landmass of Ireland is bog, and all that infrastructure that was put down in the 50s through Boardnamona and ESB is still there. So you don't have to really build anything in the Midlands. It's there, but it just needs the right people in control of it. And I hate that there is stuff being talked about in the periphery. And in relation to pubs, I understand that there's a big British chain, Witherspoons, ready to take on Irish pubs, and that'll really end the crack, I think. Well, I wouldn't be happy about that.
Well, there have been. I should say now, Johnny. I should say that you're actually referring to an announcement in December where Witherspoons announced that they would be making a huge investment in Ireland to build on their existing portfolio, and they were particularly targeting small towns and small villages where there has been a huge decline in investment. And because of what we're actually living on now, when we return to the question as well, what's happening with our pubs, which forms a central part to our lives, what is happening? I think it's a fair question to say, well, what is going on, and are pubs and the industry been unfairly targeted? Yes, indeed, they continue to operate, and they will be making investment. And according to what both commentators from government and from the judicial or system are saying, actually, there doesn't seem to be a logical reason as to why we should keep pubs closed, given that right now we're in September 9th, 2020, We are the only country in Europe keeping the pubs closed, as was pointed out by Leo Varadkar, who now I think belongs to the Ministry for Commentary, because he comments and he does nothing. He pointed out that we're the only ones in Europe closed, and have questions as to why that happens. What's happening with our pubs? What do you say?
If I could bring in Raj, because I know of all of us, the closure of the pubs affects Raj more than anybody in a way, because Raj, you play live gigs in public houses, and all of that has ended with lockdown. Mm-hmm. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I just find it's strange that the consistency of the government with all these restrictions and lockdowns, and on the one hand they're saying 6 people can't gather in a house, or they could be it could be a criminal offence, but there's everyone in restaurants and cafes, no masks or anything, and now you have pubs you can go into. If you have a meal, it's okay, but you want to drink on its own, it's not. Like, none of these things make sense. So I think this is just another, they're being consistently inconsistent, and this is just another cherry on top, I think.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, because we have what's called a social contract with the government, and it's based on trust. And I think that largely the trust of a good number of the Irish population has actually broken down. Somebody has mentioned there that we feel that we just can't quite put our finger on it, but we feel that something is happening, but we don't know what's happening. And I suppose a question that has been raised on social media in the last week is this a deliberate attempt? Is it a deliberate attempt to keep the pubs closed, make them unviable? Their pub licenses then become worthless, more or less, and then they can be hoovered up by big drinks companies like Diageo, or that UK chain of pubs for a song, as it were, putting the Irish pubs out of business. It's an interesting question, I think.
Anna, I think it's a legitimate question, because, like it or not, we are living under a neoliberal system. That's the posh word for saying, actually, we're going to run the country as though it is a supermarket, market force. So under that, you and I become consumers rather than citizens. And the other side of that as well is you are actually running goods and services within a competitive environment, which is completely consistent with a market. So the best thing a person can do, if we are running a country in terms of market, we're putting the service or thing out to market, is actually to reduce the competition, because market is based on competition. So if I'm in a position where I can wipe out the competition, I may move in there.
Right.
It's not an opinion, it's a fact. It's neoliberal principles. We are running this country on the basis of market forces. It's been acceptable. So the best thing a person can do, if we are running a country in terms of...
We're getting a bit of feedback there. Walter, if I could bring you back in, you have a great interest in politics. You ran in the European elections last year. How do you see the politics of what's happening at the minute?
What Raj was saying there is, it's so inconsistent what's happening at the moment. Leo Varadkar is like he's in opposition within the government.
Yes.
He's playing a really clever role at the moment. He's taking the rug out from underneath Micheál Martin. Micheál Martin has no control over anybody in the cabinet or anybody in government at the moment, it seems. He's dithering around the place, Leo Varadkar was so clever, even though he closed down the pubs. And the pubs were the government said the pubs would hardly be open for the rest of this year. But cleverly, he came in last week and he said the wet pubs should open again because they're open in every country in Europe. He took the rug from out under Micheál Martin yet again. And, you've got him doing this statesman stuff. He's doing every interview he can do on radio and television. He's acting as Taoiseach. He's not letting Micheál Martin run the country. And all the people in government, I mean, you've got Eamon Ryan, was it yesterday, with, saying no 2-for-1 deals and tax on cheaper clothing. And, you were talking about, is it a concerted effort to close down the pubs? Anything outside the pale, really, Leo Varadkar does not understand. And I'd just like to mention one TD, Michael Collins down in Cork Southwest. He made a really important point a couple of days ago, because the nightclubs were being put in with the pubs, and it's a total different situation to 6 or 7 people having a nice quiet pint, listening to a little bit of music and having a nice little bit of a chat, and 400 or 500 people inside in a nightclub. So fair dues to Michael Collins, he independent guy. He made that point, and it's a very important point. So I've said a lot of stuff there, but it's based on what Roger's saying. This country is in free flow at the moment. There's nobody in charge. And what I can see is Fine Gael are taking the rug out from under Fianna Fáil within government, very cleverly led by the one and only Leo Varadkar.
Well, I know. I would call him.
Go ahead, Marion.
I would call him Leo Varadkar and Company Inc. And you're absolutely right. He is playing a blinder there. He is actually the head of the Ministry for Commentary. He's making all the right noises, but he's doing nothing. He is doing nothing, and he is definitely undermining Micheál Martin. And again, that's why he should be consigned to the Ministry for Commentary. Basically, he is playing politics, and his policy and actions are completely out of step with what he's saying. He says one thing, but he does absolutely nothing to vote alongside of what he's stating. Would you believe that Leo Varadkar has now become the champion for pubs to open? Pubs don't serve food. It's beyond belief.
Yeah, but when you have a platform like he does as a minister, sorry, Anna, can I?
Yes, I wanted to bring you in. Yes.
Thank you very much. Just on the back of what Marion is saying as well, it is a neoliberal government, and they're in cahoots with big business, and it's big corporate business. And we could. I'm sure there's going to be many as a show on that. But that is the situation we're in, and the Irish people have a history of resistance. And this is the 100th anniversary of our War of Independence. We need to talk about freedom, and obviously we have to be respectful of where we are with the COVID thing. But we really need to gather in forums like this to discuss what is really going on, what the mainstream media, which is a tool of the establishment, to stop talking about the growth of musicians, original thinking, because that's scary for a neoliberal government. And American governments have proved that down through the decade. So we're going to be caught up in the American presidential election in November, like it's going to mean something. It's the Wall Street party that's going to win. And in relation to how they put their stamp in Ireland, and we see it in Dublin, and we see it in all the major cities, the vulture funds and the cuckoo funds. Our GDP is one of the best in Europe per capita, but people still can't make ends meet. Our homeless crisis is beyond belief. Our suicide epidemic is beyond belief. This isn't the thing that you'd expect for a country that's meant to have a great GDP. So the Central Statistics Office are a great place to get the facts. But then when you have the likes of RTE and News Talk and all these guys manipulating those facts to give to people, it's Johnny, you know what I mean?
Sorry to cut off there, Johnny, because I'm conscious of time, and I completely agree with what you're saying. But what I would say is bring it back, because look at the measure we are using to actually see or measure the success of our society. GDP is based based completely on economics, whereas actually that's a very, very much a framework that's defined by neoliberals. I'm actually suggesting that we need to stand back from that and look at a different framework that measures quality of life. Now, I don't actually make any apologies for saying that, because what has happened since Thatcher and Reagan is that we've completely backtracked on what we are doing in terms of how we measure the quality of our lives. And I would say that the reason we have had the introduction of neoliberal, which is about treating our world, treating our country as a marketplace rather than as a community, is as a direct reaction to the civil rights movement, who are hugely successful in the 60s and 70s. But again, GDP and even the vocabulary we use to describe how our lives are, or to even measure how our lives are, there's a huge disconnect between that and how we actually live our lives. Absolutely. And as an example, we give a huge applause for nurses. So that's a view, and that appeals to our hearts, because of course they're doing something that aligns with our values. But in reality, they need more than applause. They need more than applause.
Raj, you've been listening there quietly to what is being said. What have you to add to this as we wind up our programme for this evening?
I just think we're at the stage now where, it's time to open things up, and there's a few things the government are being really deceptive about, and one of them is this testing thing. They're publishing numbers every night on RTE, keeping that fear factor over people, but they haven't been honest about how many people they are testing. You can't keep releasing these numbers, but not say that the increase in testing has gone through the roof. There's obviously going to be more cases if you're testing thousands more people. So, I think we, like Marion was saying earlier on, it has to be down to taking the pressure off hospitals and keeping the deaths down. And apart from that, if people want to wear masks and people want to isolate, that's fair enough. But there comes a time when we need to sort of take the reins and just go back, and I think we're at that point now.
Yes, I think it's more or less coming to the point where people are feeling that there is a complete disconnect, and they're looking for more certainty from the government. I'm going to leave the final word on this topic with you, Marion.
Anna, this is a specific topic that serves to represent the attitude that has changed. At the beginning of March, or at the end of March, we were dealing with a situation where we were cooperating with each other. Now, less than 6 months later, we actually have a situation where coercion has been used. And that raises the question in itself. When do we reach the stage where we are able to actually trust people to make their own decisions instead of using coercive force, regulation, etc.? Why don't we take the attitude, go back to taking the attitude where we trust people and we say, look, here are the risks of certain behaviors. Make your own decisions around that, because otherwise we are going to, I believe, we are going to back into what I would call that rabbit hole, where we just keep pushing regulation. That is nonsensical, particularly the one that came out today in the name of heavens and everything that's good or bad. We can't sing in pubs. We have to reduce the volume in pubs. Please. This is just gone beyond reasonable. In fact, there's a bit that says, Anna, maybe you and I should do some research into what ballads we can sing below the approved volume. Come on, give me a break here. And I mean, I'm not allowed to dance in the, well, maybe if I get a license to be able to dance with my family, my wife or whatever. You know, this is beyond ridiculous. This is Sister Mary Patrick from my past, my secondary school name change, coming out. Excuse me, I'm well beyond that now. Now, would you just stop and just grip yourselves?
Just to bring the whole thing together then, you know, Raj can write the ballad, yes, and Johnny can organise the festival. Excellent. And Walter then will do the feature-length film on it, starring Hollywood actors and actresses. Excellent. I want to thank, yes, I want to thank each of you, Walter, Johnny, Raj and Marion, for joining me tonight on Centre Ground. To those of you who have been watching this live stream, I want to thank you sincerely. Just to let you know that if you want to get Jimmy Jess videos, you'll find them on his Facebook page. That's Jimmy Jess. And I think Stephen will be putting the link in the description box below this video. Also, Ray Dolan, you'll find him, Ray Dolan from Mullingar, in Mullingar, and he's on all the social media platforms. So that brings us to the end of another episode of Centre Ground, live streaming Wednesday evenings from 8 to 9 p.m. And all of this is made possible by Stephen Kerr and making his platform, the Irish Inquiry, available to me to live stream. And I'm very, very grateful to him for that. So until next Wednesday evening at 8, have a wonderful week. Bannock Day or Galéir.